Welcome back to the Silent Plus podcast. My name is Josh Watford, and across the desk from me is
John Nicholson.
That's him.
Yep.
And so maybe you have just listened to the last one that we just went through. We're working through the Lord's Prayer, and we just talked about hallowed be your name. And we kind of teased out how this is somewhat related to this next section we're going to look at. And so you ended on how our Father in heaven is connected to his name being made holy. And so all this is flowing together.
Yes.
And we don't think that, Jesus is like, okay, we're done praying this part, now we're going to go to this part. It's all connected and it's all one prayer, obviously, but the themes are connected and they're not detached from one another. And that will become even more plain in this section and even the sections following.
Yeah.
So this next verse 10, this is Matthew 6:10. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. What you think, John? What does that mean?
The key word for me is. And it's and this flows throughout the rest of the prayer as well, but it's a present tense reality. We tend to think, I think vast majority of people think of heaven sometime in the hereafter. That's what happens after I die and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
What Jesus here in this prayer is reminding us of, again, this reorientation to make sure that we're headed in the right direction on this matter, but also in his proclamation of the gospel. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's here now. There's a very present reality. Certainly it's going to be fulfilled later, but it's already present. And so this present tense notion. It's not that we're praying for sometime off in the sweet by and by. We're praying for God to bring that to bear right now. The reality that already exists. He's a father. He's holy. That's where he is. But we're also praying for that reality to come to bear right here in our world, on earth as it is in heaven. And that ultimately, and I know that you spent a good bit of time thinking about this, I think that ultimately is the prayer for the righting of creation, putting it back to rights, where heaven and earth were not disparate and or separate entities as such in our experience, but where they dwell together.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I see kingdom come. A lot of people get caught up in kingdom. Like, okay, well, what does that mean? Is this a physical, political reality? Is it something else? But I think your will be done explains the kingdom. Yeah. I think that's our, for your technical term of the day, exegetical phrase.
That is a nice technical term.
Yeah, so it just means that the second phrase explains the first. Yeah. So your kingdom come, all right, what does that mean? It means God's will being done.
Yeah.
I think about Jesus in this same sermon where he says, many of you will say to me, Lord, Lord, on that last day.
Wow.
And you'll say, I did this miracle and that miracle. He says, but it's the one who does the will of my Father who will enter the kingdom. Yep. And so it's it's a true connection of doing the will of God as being a part of the kingdom and actually causing the kingdom to come to bear on earth.
Yeah, so what does that look like? I mean, in real terms, those are, nice heavenly spiritual ideas, but what does that look like, to use your phrase of what I get off into sometimes, my down in the dirt theology? What does that begin to look like in reality?
Well, okay, so just very briefly, one more kind of overarching statement. Yeah. We are going through, in Bible class, we just went through 2 John. And 2 John, he talks about how he was delighted to hear that some of the people of the church were walking in the truth. And I'm struck by that phrase, walking in the truth, because you think of truth, you believe in truth. You just, that's a proposition that you believe in. Truth is a proposition you believe in. However, truth always leads to action, the walking in the truth. And so when we are claiming that Jesus is king, when we are the ones that are claiming that he has died and rose again and he has ascended into heaven, he is coming back to judge the living and the dead, as we quote
Apostles' Creed, right?
then we're going to do what he has commanded us to do. And so we can talk about every single commandment that he has for us.
Right.
But in 2 John, he talks about walking in love. Walking in truth and walking in love are the same things. And so I see love between Christians and love between Christians and non-believers. I see that as the key. In my opinion, Paul says that love fulfills the law.
And Jesus would say it as well.
Yeah, he does say, love the Lord your God and love your neighbor as yourself. And so I think love is that key, virtue's not the word I'm looking for, but action, way of life that we have to bring the kingdom to bear.
Yeah.
So what do you think? You got a different perspective on that?
No, I think you're right on it. And this beautiful marriage of what Jesus is talking about here as this kingdom coming to bear right now. And again, I can't get away from that this is... Because I guess perhaps, and this may be more personal for me, maybe me inserting my own personal experience into this, but it's just where because it was such a reorienting moment for me to realize that instead of me waiting and biding my time and trying to live a good life, here and now, to get to this other life that's going to be so much better, what Jesus is promising and what he's instructing us to pray is bring that, because that's already, it exists now.
Right.
Let's begin to align our lives with that reality. And, it's kind of like talking to people who visit the United Kingdom and go drive over there. Everybody drives on the wrong side of the road, in our opinion.
Right.
But
everybody has an accent.
Absolutely. Well, that too. But, but it's, you have to readjust to that reality of that kingdom that's there, if you will.
Yeah.
And so it exists. And this kingdom of heaven, it's here and now, as Jesus is proclaiming, and reorienting our life to live in accordance with that has huge implications. And of course, there's some famous examples from history. William Wilberforce is kind of probably one of the gold standard moments out there, that out of his faith he came to this understanding that owning another human being as property was heinous, was just wrong.
Yeah.
And led to the abolition of slavery in the United Kingdom, which ultimately crossed the pond and led to what was the American Civil War over this issue of slavery ultimately. And all you history buffs, don't write me about the other issues, but because that really becomes the core, the crux of it. But it's bringing, here's what I believe, here's the reality of the world, that all men are created equal, as our Constitution famously said. Do we really believe that? Are we going to acknowledge proposition, or are we going to begin to walk this thing out? And when we're praying, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, we're saying, I acknowledge the reality that's there. Now I'm going to begin to walk that out right now.
Yeah. And Jesus, he has multiple parables about what the kingdom is like, and I think we went through a few of those.
Right.
Last year?
Yeah.
And one of my favorites is the mustard seed.
Sure.
This mustard seed is just planted, and then it grows into this tree, and all the birds of the air from everywhere will come and have its nest in there. And so you think about this kingdom, and we may be looking around right now and thinking, man, there's so much corruption, there's so much injustice, there's so much sin, there's so much deception, so on and so forth. But Jesus has promised that the kingdom grows.
Yeah.
And we may be thinking, well, here in America, here in Marion or whatever piece of land you want to look at, it seems like Christianity is shrinking. Well, that's simply just not the case.
That's right.
Because God he's not concerned with only Marion,
right,
with only America. He is concerned with those things, but not only those. When you have Christianity exploding in China and all over Africa, and those places, that's moving toward the center. Didn't you post something about that recently? Yeah, so Church App, if you haven't gotten Church App, you need to download it.
There's your commercial.
Pastor John, he posts some good stuff. So anyways, but it reminds us that his kingdom isn't just wherever my kingdom is.
Exactly.
His kingdom is everywhere.
We want it everywhere. And it feeds into our day-to-day life, even in the next few verses here in Matthew chapter 6, as we begin to deal with the issue of anxiety. It says, stop worrying, if you are, and then don't start again. Why? How can I do that? On the basis of the fact that the kingdom of heaven is here, that it's there, and I'm praying for that, and I'm seeing it. So I can either live my life in this anxious fashion, and listen, there's plenty to be concerned about. There's plenty to, wag our heads at that's happening in our world. But the reality in which we live, and again, I think this is one of the grand invitations of this prayer, to reorient our lives to the reality that God is our Father, He is holy, and that His kingdom is at hand, is present. And we want to see more of it. So we begin to live that reality and not allow the world to shape us into its mold.
That's good.
Yeah.
We're right at 10 minutes.
All right, perfect.
That's a great ending spot. Join us next time as we talk about food.
Yeah, some daily bread stuff.
Yes.
That's good.
All right. We'll see you next time.